Hi everyone, and thank you very much to be with us today to mark that day of the International Women's Day, where we're going to speak with 5 high-profile women in the payment industry, in the fintech industry. Some are physically here, some are there remotely because it's an international panel. We have Chiara Sheldon. Hi Chiara, and thank you very much for being with us. You are the co-founder and the COO at Reworth. You worked in Switzerland and in France in hospitality before going to Mexico and work for international consulting companies and banks. Right after you opened Reworth in 2020, which is quite a young company. So thank you for being with us, Chiara.
Thank you very much. Very excited to be part of the conversation today.
Now we also have Denisse Cuellar. Denisse, you are based in Brazil, but you work for Banco de Credito Peru. You are the head of open innovation at BCP, and you have been very active in the startups and fintech ecosystems in Latin America. So thank you very much for being with us, Denisse.
Very much to you.
And now here we also have Anne-Laure Ferrand. Anne-Laure, you work for Crédit Agricole Payment Services. You have more than 25 years of experience in marketing strategy, in e-commerce, and in the payment industry, because you started working as a strategy consultant for international card schemes, both in Europe and in North America. You moved to Hong Kong in Asia, where you opened your own startup, or let's say e-commerce companies, retail companies, for more than 10 years before you joining CAPS, Crédit Agricole Payment Services today, which will be very interesting because your experience in retail and online distribution through various channels will be very valuable to understand also the changes in the payment landscape. Sylvie Vigier was Chief Security Officer at Ingenico Worldline brand. The same, you are very senior, Sylvie, with more than 20 years of experience in product and solution security. You had various roles and positions at international organizations. So thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be with you today.
And Jocelyne MWILU, you are the CEO at PPI France, but you've been working in the payment industry for more than 13 years before you joined PPI. I've noticed that you are very particularly inspired by the societal transformations brought about the payment revolution, which we're going to speak in a minute. So thank you all very much to take part of this roundtable, and we all know still that the landscape of the payment industry has dramatically changed with the ascent and the multiplication of fintech players, but also the speed of technology converging business and payments, and especially the last 5 or 6 years. And it's also at the same time where we have seen more women faces at the strategic positions. What have you noticed throughout the years between the gender gap that we've noticed in our ecosystem, where even today only 11% of all board members are women and 19% only are company executives?
Well, thank you very much for this question. In fact, I must say that having evolved in the retail industry and the payment industry has been a very good opportunity for me to observe what's going on in terms of diversity. And it's true that the more we're going through digitalization, the more we see that payment is not a question of technology, it's more a question of customer experience, of customer journey, and creating value to make all customer purchases get done easier than they used to be before. So I believe that probably the fact that we're moving away from a technology issue to a consumer and customer in general, because it can be corporates or professionals or merchants, I mean any type of customers, have to have a more seamless experience, has finally fostered a kind of diversity, because we have to construct marketing strategies, and finally we all are customers, we all have our experiences, and the fact of being women, for example, and of being naturally very inclined to multitask with families at home, with a full-time job and everything, makes us very well positioned actually to work on these new customer journeys and try to facilitate and create value to make everybody's life easier.
And bring new ideas as well.
Exactly, bring new ideas, bring a new concept, and it's true that I believe that women are very creative and and again very able to multitask. So in many ways we are able to see what's going to be useful and what's going to help every single customer to have an easier life in their everyday purchases and in their everyday life.
You, Jocelyne, you are a quite young woman CEO. Do you share this kind of what Anna just said?
Well, first of all, thank you, Kat, for having me and inviting me today to discuss this very compelling topic about payment and women and diversity. I totally share what Anne-Laure is saying about the assets that young women have, and I have no doubt, and this panel is also speaking itself, that there are many professionals in this panel, but I'm also seeing some, I would say, barriers from different aspects for women to join those senior roles. The first, I will say, is due to themselves. We see that women will, before joining a senior role, they have to bargain their personal, I would say, fulfillment and their career. So this is not necessarily due to the women themselves, but also due to the way our society is done and I would say the misconception that we have about power and about the senior roles.
This is interesting because you talk about the society and for example, Chiara, you are a young entrepreneur. You opened Reworth, but in Mexico. I feel like when we were discussing over there, the dynamic is a bit different. Do you share with that as well?
Yes, so from my perspective, being in Mexico for the past 4 years, I've seen a change, especially in like women being entrepreneurs and starting their own business. Because what happened is that during COVID, obviously, people had to start transacting and doing things online for the first time. So this created, obviously, new business opportunities. And I've seen more and more women actually jumping in that sector, especially fintech, and starting new businesses from zero. So it's very interesting to see that people start their own business, entrepreneurs, and then grow, obviously, to the role, a more senior role, and grow those businesses. And this also came, so all this disruption of services needed in Latin America, this also came with like funds being much more open to invest in women in Latin America. And it is actually tripled. The amount of investments has tripled from 4.3 billion to 14.8 billion from 2020 to 2021. So we really see this change in the ecosystem as well of funds helping women and female founders to actually open their business. So this has been an incredible change in the ecosystem. And I can see it from myself going to events, more and more women are participating and helping each other in growing our companies.
You made the choice to open your own company because you wanted to get the high responsibility much quicker than if you were going to enter traditional or large organizations. Denisse, I'd like to hear your reaction because you speak with a lot of women and also, I mean, a lot of entrepreneurs, whether it's women or men. And I would like to hear your point of view of what has been just said.
Yes, just a point about what Chiara mentioned. In fact, that's true that funds are more interested on women fintech founders in LATAM. Well, not only in LATAM, but because there was a McKinsey study that presents that, in fact, the rate of return for a fund who invest in a fintech that has a women founder is the double that if you have invested in a typical startup where founders are only men. So they really realize that the diversity brings more return. So we have numbers that prove that. So that's certainly one big argument why funds decide to invest more in women. Going back to the question that you mentioned, yes, I mean, certainly in LATAM, we have several examples how women are taking more leadership positions, not only in traditional companies, but especially in fintechs. I try to find again the number, but if you can see, there is a rate of the women fintech founders in the world. And when you look at the women fintech founders in LATAM, it's bigger. In fact, it's higher. It's higher than the world average. So that's good. That shows exactly that we can see some difference in LATAM. For example, I was telling you, for example, the Stripe CEO in Mexico is a woman. She's leading the Mexico FinTech Association. In Brazil, you have Nubank, the biggest digital bank. One of the co-founders is a woman, Cristina Junqueira. So we have great examples that really women FinTech leaders are kicking it. I mean, they're really successful, and that's good for our ecosystem. And I will add also that, in fact, maybe why is you have these higher numbers in LATAM, but in our culture in LATAM, you have a very entrepreneurial culture. The small businesses are part of the identity of all the region, of all LATAM. And when you look at the numbers inside, I mean, most of the owners of these small businesses are women. In fact, that's why we have special financial services to help women entrepreneurs. So I think somehow it's part of the culture. And then finally, it's going to the tech companies and of course, big companies with the time.
We don't see that many women also in tech. So I'm very happy to have you, Sylvie, here with us on this panel. How do you explain that?
Indeed, in technology domain, it's very similar like in payment. 20 years ago, we didn't see many women in that environment. At school, when I was at school, we were maybe 10% of women in my classroom. Now we are seeing more and more women coming in, and I think it's a change of the culture. It's a change for women themselves. So, because there is still a sort of pressure on young women, young kids. I will talk about my daughter, for instance, where a few years ago, when she was around 10, 12 years old, she was saying, "Oh, I'll never work in technology, it's not for women."
And she has a mother with a chief security officer.
And I am. So that was the part a bit funny. Why? We can see that all around young girls, there is a sort of social event. I don't know, I can't explain it, but it's still deep in our roots, I would say, that women should not go there. And I think along the years, when they study, etc., it changes a lot. And as I said, maybe 20 years ago, we were 10% women in engineering school. Now it's coming closer to 20%, and I think that your figures say that now women in tech are about 24-25%. Exactly. It is increasing, and hopefully we are changing the mindset. And we, the five of us, are part of this indeed, to change the mindset and to say women can go everywhere. Tech, payment, everywhere.
Jocelyne was pointing this out when we were preparing this roundtable on the barriers for women. I mean, you mentioned one that was, by themselves, like you just said, they don't feel like it's for them. But in terms of promotion, when you were at school, you didn't see that many women in the engineering schools. So that's what you noticed as well?
Absolutely. And I would like to see is that the world in which we are working, so payments, fintechs, are unfortunately are accompanied by many misconceptions. People believe that to work there, you only need to have a very strong technical or financial backgrounds, and it's not sexy. We have to admit that. When you are young in school, this is not what you dream of. Payments, people put that aside. Technical people put that aside. So what I'm noticing is that you have some fintechs which are appearing more appealing to people because they are more innovative and because they are part of the everyday lives of people, which payment in the past sounds very, a word very apart, a lot of jargons. So we also have to do our homework. so that we can be attractive. I myself arrive in this world, I have been selected by people, and I will not first to go into it. And there is a study that I would like to mention that is saying that, it was conducted a couple of years ago, that is saying that approximately 50% of young men out of school, so when they're graduated, they go in their first job, they dare to ask for a wage which is higher than the above, and only 7% of women. So, of course, this is, you have some misconceptions, but as we are here, we also have a role to play at school to encourage our young women, young girl into what we are doing, to explain that it's also part of our society, and also, I would say, the general culture, because culture, you cannot change that within a day.
This is true that traditional organizations, the big players, they communicate a lot, and also diversity, not only gender gap, but diversity in general, is really in the core strategy of those big organizations. And for fintechs or startups, it sounds like it's natively part of it. They communicate, but not as much as the historical players. You notice that, Anne-Laure, right?
In fact, when you work for a bank like or a group like Crédit Agricole, like myself, I mean, it's been there for more than 100 years. So we live with things that have been there forever, and the cultural change has to happen, and you have to enforce it a little bit and help it to happen and to make things changed. And in many ways, I mean, we live with a IT solution that have been there for a long time. We're not as agile as the new companies and the newcomers and the fintech can be, of course, because we live with a lot of an existing organization. But I must say that, therefore, I mean, we have very strong action towards women empowerment in big groups like Crédit Agricole, and we really work on promoting diversity, not only for women, but part of it for women. And we work on sorority, and we have lots of initiatives, you know, to foster women leadership and to encourage women leadership. And I must say that, especially in our bank, I mean, in Crédit Agricole Payment Services, we have a gender equality index that is 98% high, which is extremely high already. So it's really something that is very conscious, and people in the banking industry, I mean, in my bank at least, are very conscious that diversity is key, and that it will help us go further and transform this industry and digitalize it.
You notice that as well, Sylvie?
Yeah, actually, for me, diversity is the basic for creativity.
Yes.
And if you have people coming from different horizons, coming from different places in the world, women and men working together, you will boost your creativity. And maybe you have noticed it as well, but definitely in technology, when we have very difficult topics to solutions to create, to define, having different people around the table will help with many ideas coming around, blooming, and you can choose what you want to dig a bit further.
Well, for sure, companies with a mix of diversity, and we talk about a gender gap, but also age gap, also multicultural. They capture new markets, they capture new revenue, they generate more revenue. And there is a statistic that says that it creates 19% more revenue than the standard companies where there is less diversity.
Indeed, sometimes we can see that having a woman in the middle of a technical meeting, which is very hard to handle, will ease the discussion, smooth a little bit,
yes.
And at one point of time, get back on track with what we want to do and make sure that, okay, we start again with creating ideas and studying the topics.
You notice that as well, Jocelyne?
Yes, for sure. It's pretty rare to have women into senior level, and but as you have mentioned, it's a question of bottom line. We are not just talking about ideology. We are talking about making more revenue. So it's, I think it's a metric that makes sense for people who are running a company. And what I noticed in my group, for instance, I have some people who are not from the technical background, who are not from payments, and they are bringing a new way of seeing things. For instance, I have one of our assistants who is helping the more senior people and the more, I will say, technical people to make their speech more accessible to people who are not from payments, and we are seeing the difference.
From a constellation of fintech players and the ancient of GAFAM, they put diversity as an important place. What benefits of being inclusive matter in the payment industry?
And I think why? Because these companies and fintechs, I mean, they are innovative by since the beginning. Today, due to technology, payments is the sector that it's disrupting the most, I think, today worldwide. I mean, every day there are new type of payment, cryptocurrency, buy now, pay later, new technologies that are completely transforming the payments industry now in metaverse, Web 3.0. So certainly that's where you need very disruptive profile, and that's why we need a diverse team.
What I realized as well with COVID is that flexible working has made also this point of being an important factor in being an inclusive workplace. And these big companies, for example, Facebook, Google, etc., they kind of did this already before, this flexible remote scheme where you could work from anywhere in the world. It has been reinforced today with COVID. And I think this is great because that means that you can employ people that have different backgrounds, that have different necessities, that need to work in the morning or in the afternoon because they have kids, you're a woman or not. So that's something that I really realized also in the past 2-3 years with obviously COVID, that being flexible in terms of in the workplace also brought a lot of people from different backgrounds and not only stay with the people that work from 9 to 6. And like I mentioned, this is something that big companies like Google, Facebook have been doing a bit since the beginning. So yeah, like I mentioned, at the end of the day, being inclusive, if you don't have an inclusive workplace, people are not going to feel comfortable and this will lead to turnover. So it's something very, very important to have since day one and promote that in the company.
I totally agree with what Chiara said before, is that you need to encourage that, but really, you really need to put some concrete actions behind that. And what I'm seeing that if you have people from different background, people very senior, very, I will say, skilled, with a very solid skill set, and people who are coming from more creative world, this merge is bringing some new creativity that you will not think about. And the customer, at the end, are the ones who benefit from that, I think.
Just like fintech, when you're working on new solutions, for example, exactly. They say that diversity helps to build and create new solutions.
Exactly, it's definitely the same aspect. Merging ideas coming from different backgrounds, from people from different backgrounds, it's definitely the best option to bring value, to be creative. This is the key word, actually. Be creative is the consequence of diversity for me.
But how can we promote better or more diversity or reduce this gender gap in the future?
As of today, there's only 19% women being in a C position. Yeah. So I guess, I mean, I don't like the idea, but I think we have to deal with it, and somehow we have to have quotas because things won't happen unless we set targets and we set objectives, and unless we put numbers, I mean, and we define what these objectives are, we won't reach them because we won't be able to measure how we get there and where we stand basically compared to where we want to be in a few years' time.
Putting quotas just to get KPIs.
Exactly, having quotas to have KPIs and to be able to measure how we progress and how we get where we want to be in a few years' time, because obviously we're not where we want to be now with 19% women in a leading position.
There's no right or wrong answer here, but it's true that quota creates a lot of debate. I think, Sylvie, you have a different view.
Well, I'm not very keen on quotas actually, because it's always a bit tricky to answer this question. I mean, if you have quotas and you say this woman has got this job because of quotas, what about her skills?
Yes.
What about her personality, her character, and
Did I get the job because of my skills or because I'm a woman?
I agree. This is a way to move forward and to improve the solution. But it's really frustrating for women to have this kind of debate. We have to change the philosophy at early age and to make everyone understand in the society that women can do whatever they want. And there shouldn't be any difference in terms of wages as well, as you mentioned earlier, Jocelyne. There shouldn't be any differences in wages because we are women and maybe one day we will have a child and we won't work full time. That's wrong. Yeah. That's wrong because we are multitasking.
We are, definitely.
Yeah, because on regarding the gender pay gap in fintech, it represents 31% in 2019. And in the finance in the banks, it's 25% difference in the average gender pay gap. Jocelyne, what will be on your side, from your point of view, solutions or how we could promote maybe better the diversity?
So first of all, before answering to that question, I wanted to say something, is that every right that we have, today more than ever we are seeing it, every right that we have is not something that is granted. It's not something that came randomly. Freedom, all the challenges that we are mentioning, it is the result of people who took a stand and fought for it. For this issue, I think if we wait that nature does its own work, we'll wait for centuries. So I have no magical answer. I see the challenges, and what we are doing here, I think, is a good step to make people aware, but also to take actions in the workplace, from the social point of view, the external, all the leaders who are in a leader position have to make an effort so that this way of seeing or perceiving women, because you can also, we are seeing that even very skilled women, they will not necessarily apply for a senior role, even though they tick all the boxes. Even when you give the opportunity, the CV, you will receive more CVs for men. So we really have to work with our young ladies at an early age to encourage them, to mentor them, to put a way through so that they can see that it's possible, not just to hear it, but to see it.
I see you, Chiara, nodding strongly on this statement.
I think one of the points that you all mentioned is that since a young age, we are put into boxes. So girls like pink, boys like blue. And being able to take off this mindset that we are put in boxes, and for example, in the payment industry, that it's more men focused, is very difficult. And you have to be very strong. And like you said, Jocelyne, is that you need to give an example and people need to be able to step up and be there and show the example. But I think this comes, obviously, I think women are doing a tremendous job, and I've seen the impact, especially here in Mexico, that women are more and more being out there organizing events, especially focused on women. But then I think there's another part that's very crucial for helping women, especially that have children, for example, is government. Because what happens is that women have this long maternity leave, for example, but men don't. So there's no help on the men's side to leave their job or take care of the children, and it's left to the women. And this also scares companies to have women in leader positions because they're scared this is going to happen. And having help from the governments, and I think they do it pretty well in Sweden, where they give longer paternity leaves for men, incentives for women to be able to go to work, help for childcare, makes a huge difference because their women can really go back to work after they gave birth.
Denisse, because in Latin America, they are owner of their own business, they create their own business, they have higher strategic position. Is it because of governments, for example, or is it because it's a culture?
I think it's more a part of culture. The need made that I have to do something to survive. I have to create my own business. I have to be creative. In fact, since if I'm a small owner of a shop, or I'm the CEO of a fintech, so I think that's quite natural. We need to be to do anything in order to survive. But I would like to add some comments about what you were mentioning before. how to help to bring more visibility to the diversity. Any woman who has a leadership role, if she has the opportunity to be part of this kind of events, podcasts, when they can share their experience, that's great, that's awesome, that's already something. But even if you are in small groups with your friends, small meetings, is for women, don't be shy, because I have several friends that, for example, but I mean, it doesn't worth to share my story. I mean, even if we are 3 people around, I mean, yes, it's worth it. I mean, yes, somehow at some time, your story can have some impact in the life of someone, in the daughter of someone. So I think the main point is also for us, we should not be shy to share what we have achieved so far. I think that's quite important. And something else that I would like to add is about data. In fact, during all our conversation, I heard a lot of data, a lot of numbers, and I think data help us to bring new action, to do something new. And what we mentioned at the beginning was that due to the fact that we saw that the return rate of fintechs where you have women founders were higher. So due to that, the funds decided to invest more. That's what we need, to show data that when you have a women CEO, the results of the company are improving. When you have when the women CMO is there, the numbers go higher. I think that's also what we need. I mean, data that supports our statements, and that's great that more organizations, the Inter-American Bank, the universities, McKinsey, they are bringing this kind of data. That's what we need to show to the world. That's not only a vogue, it's really happening.
I guess the way we raise our children is also literally impacting on what will be the organizations tomorrow, basically. And I know that, for example, for the young men in my team, for example, now they're allowed to have paternity leaves that are twice as long as what the government imposed in France, and that's been for more than 2 or 3 years before the government set the regulation. And I think it's very important because, in fact, when we talk about children, when we talk about families, I mean, men and fathers are as important as mothers in the end. And in fact, if we raise young girls with a self-awareness and all the value that they can get and all the empowerment they can get from working. I mean, somehow, in a way, we balance the responsibility of parenthood between the father and the mother. I mean, and unless if we continue thinking that mothers are in charge of raising children and that father work, I mean, it won't happen. I mean, we really have to work it a different way so that it's becoming very equal. Inspiring,
and I hope that this roundtable is going to inspire more women to take positions, to apply for positions, to ask for a pay raise. And that's the purpose of this roundtable today. So thank you very much, all of you, for being with us today. From Mexico and from Brazil, and is here from France. You are all inspiring women. So continue to inspire at your own level. I will do the same. Thank you, and I hope to have you soon again for another roundtable.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kat.
Thank you very much, Kat.